Welcome aboard to the 2024 Volkswagen Atlas SE with Tech, one of the best equipped crossovers in the entire industry with some of the nicest materials. However, there is a catch in the form of loads of capacitive buttons. So let's go ahead and check it out and see if the capacitive buttons are going to turn you off from an otherwise fantastic package of a 7-seater crossover. Now, I'd love to give a massive shout out to Finley Volkswagen for allowing me to come out here and check out this 2024 Volkswagen Atlas SE with Tech. The exterior, I must say, is quite stunning. I really like the way they did this full-on facelift. They made the grille quite a bit bigger, adding these beautiful LED lights on the front. It's got this really cool light bar on the top of the grille, got these nice low beams, high beams, and turn signals that are all LED. There's a couple fake vents, a couple fake exhaust pipes, but for a family crossover, that's not a big deal at all to me. Now, luckily, they haven't changed the side of the Atlas at all because it still looks really nice. It's got these bold fender lines over the wheels. The wheels themselves look fantastic, by the way. They have some decent rubber, and it creates this quite rugged look. And the Silver Mist Metallic, as boring as it is, sparkles in the sunlight, which is pretty nice. It's got this nice chrome trim around the windows, these nice blacked out roof racks, and a pretty decent amount of body cladding, but not too much. It's overall a very minimalist but bold design. The mirrors, even though they're not door mounted, have these built-in LED turn signals and blind spot indicators. Plus, we have keyless entry door handles, making it very easy to get in and out. And that's not the only keyless part, in fact. If we work our way toward the back where we have this really awesome light bar, I'll get to that in a second, we actually have a lift gate that if you wave your feet underneath, it'll open it for you. Very nice if you're carrying things in both hands. Plus, the taillight assembly looks incredible, especially at night. Plus, we even have amber turn signals, making these taillights more safe too. Again, we do have fake exhaust pipes, but that's not a big deal. We do have a 5,000-pound towing capacity, so of course, we have your trailer hitch right here with this towing standard. And the back end has a little bit of chrome across the Atlas badge, but it's not too much. It's pretty conservative and well done. So overall, as far as the exterior goes, I think Volkswagen nailed it with the exterior of the new Atlas. But the interior is really the part you want to see, and albeit the most controversial, as pretty as it looks, is it really functional? Well, let's find out. When you get inside, you'll immediately notice these extremely comfortable seats. By the way, the base level has ventilated seats with this really sweet diamond stitch pattern. They have great bolster support and they're incredibly comfortable. Plus, on this SE with Tech, they are power for just the driver's seat only, but you can get plenty of under thigh support since you have 2 tiers of height adjustment, recline, and you even have lumbar support. So with me at the helm, I could just cruise and cruise for hours on end with this armrest, and this armrest being in a pretty decent spot, although you do have to sit quite low to take advantage of these from my experience. The leather-wrapped steering wheel feels absolutely incredible. It's got these little plastic paddle shifters. They don't really have much of a feel to them, but you're not really going to be using these in a family crossover. It is fully tilting and telescoping with loads of range. I also like how it's flat bottom. It's got this nice little silver trim around here. The steering wheel controls are pretty well done on this Atlas. I really like how they got rid of the touch sensitive buttons. In fact, the Atlas never had it to begin with, but I like how despite the loads of capacitive buttons, which we'll get to in a little bit in this Atlas, we do still have physical buttons for the steering wheel. So we have a heated steering wheel with 3 tiers of heating. You have all your back and next controls here, volume controls here, cruise controls here, which are very easy to use. We have adaptive cruise control, and there is all of your controls to adjust your 10.25-inch Volkswagen Digital Cockpit Pro. It's incredibly configurable, giving you 3 different types of screens. I really like this one that shows both your tach and your speedo. I am so thankful that this is a standard feature on the Atlas. The left and right buttons allow you to change what is on the left and right side of the gauge cluster respectively. It's very easy to use and pretty configurable, unlike the 12-inch screen, which we'll get into in a little bit. But overall, I really like the way they did this digital gauge cluster. The turn signal stalks feel fantastic. If you press this little button on the left of the turn signal stalk, you can enable and disable all of your safety assist systems. I really like how easy it is to get to. Wiper controls are pretty good. If you push it back, it activates your rear wiper. I really like all of the soft touch materials on the dash. They feel pretty nice and squidgy, almost like an Audi. And there's even this really cool wood trim. It's not real wood, it is plastic, but I really like that they made it matte. It makes it feel a little more upscale and a little more like a living room in here, which is just pretty nice. There's even this little perforated texture that works its way around the dashboard, and there's just a little bit of gloss black, but there's not like an overly crazy abundance of it. Looking at the door panels, I like the padded armrest, one touch down and up windows, mirror controls are pretty great, although one thing that's a little weird to see is that we don't have heated mirrors. That's something that came standard on my Volkswagen Jetta SE 12 years ago, but this brand new Atlas doesn't have it. Like, come on, VW, that's just a weird thing to cheap out on. But the door pockets are absolutely massive. In fact, I was able to fit pretty much all of the props I was using in this video just in that door pocket alone. Working our way toward the center is the most controversial element of the new Atlas by far. This beautiful 12-inch screen with wireless and wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That part of the functionality is absolutely fantastic, but we're gonna get onto its downsides. First of all, your climate controls are all built in. There are these little shortcut buttons. They're not even really buttons though, on the bottom. And what you do is you can, if I turn on the climate control real quick, you can slide those and you can adjust it from low to high temperature-wise really quickly, which is nice on those autumn days where it's freezing in the morning and really hot in the afternoon. I have no idea how that works. But your volume controls also live right here too. They don't work amazing. I just recommend using the steering wheel controls to adjust that. But you do have 3 zones of climate control. In fact, the climate controls in the back are fully physical. Why did they give them the fully physical climate controls? It's the driver that needs to be able to use physical buttons using muscle memory. The problem with these climate controls, in fact, if I press the climate button down here, there's a couple shortcut buttons there. If I go there, I have the full menu to adjust my climate controls. I can turn them off by pressing the power button. I can adjust the fan speed pretty quickly, although as you can see, I'm trying to adjust it and it's not letting me adjust it. It's not letting me drag my finger. You can tap it on the ends or you can drag your finger across. Overall, you would think it's pretty easy to use, right? Well, not really, because it's actually really laggy. Like for example, if I wanted to change the air direction, there's a bit of a delay, especially with the heated seats. There's like a full 1 second delay when I want to enable and disable those, especially with those standard ventilated seats. You want to use those quite a bit. The thing I really like is that you can actually slide the temperature to go from low to high pretty much instantaneously. So I can't fault it for that. That part is nice. If you hit the rear button, you can adjust all of your rear climate controls right from here, even though they have physical climate controls, which why didn't we get those? But there's smart climate, which gives you a bunch of different settings. So you can press any of these buttons and it'll adjust the climate controls to give you whatever setting you desire. And there's also this thing called air care. Now here's air care. Now if I click on the little eye, it says to me, fine dust particles and pollen are filtered out of the vehicle interior air when you activate this function. So that's pretty cool. I guess it acts like an air filter, but if you click on the little gear, you got all these little settings. I'm probably not going to show these because it's nothing crazy, but it's got automatic air recirculation. You can set your seat heating, ventilation, and steering wheel heating all from right here, but it's kind of silly that you have to go through the sub-menus to do that. I am glad that the heated steering wheel is a physical button though. Thank goodness for that. So that's pretty much the climate controls and, again, the most controversial part of this vehicle. In fact, when I was driving, I found myself having to adjust the climate controls a few times during my drive, and I found myself getting distracted, often sometimes falling under the speed limit. But don't worry, there were no other cars around, so it was perfectly safe to do so, but you can only imagine in a more sketchy environment, right? But the infotainment system itself, other than that, is actually pretty fluid and easy to use. There is your page for all of your main apps. You can get to your media, your CarPlay, adjust your sound, equalizer, all of that's pretty easy to use. Enable and disable safety assist systems through here too, although it is much easier to do it through the Digital Cockpit Pro. There is the navigation icon, but if you click on it, it says the vehicle is not equipped with it. Why give us the icon then? This is also something that Audi is also notorious for doing. Especially it's almost a $50,000 vehicle, I would expect navigation. And it's even funnier because if you swipe to the right, we have this other screen which shows you some other useful information, little shortcuts, but it keeps saying starting navigation, implying that you have navigation, right? Well, it just stays there forever and doesn't do anything. So I'm not really sure what the point is there. So even though with the heated seats you have to go into the sub-menu to adjust those, there's actually a 2-finger shortcut. If you use 2 fingers, you can turn on your heated seats, but it's incredibly sluggish and slow, and I don't see why anybody would ever do it that way. That's just my personal opinion. Another thing that's also integrated into this screen is the auto start stop, which, by the way, you have to turn on every single time you turn the car on. So you have to swipe down like it's a notification center and then hit the button. Why didn't they just make it a physical button that just sat right there like on every other Atlas that preceded this? I don't know. Maybe it was to cost cut, who knows. Now, using this infotainment system can be a little confusing at times just to find where everything is, especially if you page away from the main screen. But if I click on vehicle, I can click on the main vehicle icon and it allows me to rotate the vehicle in kind of like a 360-degree view, and this is how I can adjust all of the vehicle-related settings, but the system settings live on their own screen. So overall, it's a pretty complicated infotainment system, but I think with a little bit of work, it's going to be a fantastic system. It's very big, very easy to read, very visually appealing, but again, it's just missing a little bit of functionality, especially while you're driving. If you look just beneath there, you have your air vents. Some people may think this is a little bit low, but I think that once you get used to it, it'll be perfectly fine. You can just point the vents up if you want to blow it on your hands, especially when you're cruising in warmer weather or in the sun. But in the middle of those air vents, you have your 4 shortcut buttons and your hazard lights. They are all capacitive buttons except the hazard lights, which are a fully physical button. Why they didn't just make all these physical buttons, I have no idea. But the first one's the assist button, which takes you right back to the assist thing we were looking at earlier. Hit on the climate button, takes you to your climate controls. It's actually pretty quick right there. Hit this button, it enables your backup camera and your parking sensors. And then this button is my favorite. This allows you to change your driving modes. It's not nearly as cool as the dial we had earlier, but you have eco, comfort, sport, and because this is the 4Motion model, we get off-road and snow. And you can see that the engine just kicked on by itself. No idea why it even shut off in the first place because I did just enable the automatic start-stop. But if we go back into the custom and we click the little 3 lines, you can adjust pretty much everything from the steering, drivetrain, engine sound, adaptive cruise control, and climate control. For example, I like to have the steering in sport to give me a little more feedback. So overall, the driving modes are definitely best in their class here. If we pop open this little door here, I quite like this area. There's a nice little charging pad here. I believe it's a wireless charging pad. It doesn't quite work with my phone because I have a giant protruding camera lens, but it's big enough to put a plus-sized iPhone. There's a little pad here, which isn't quite big enough to put an iPhone, but you could put one there. There are 2 USB-C ports, so you can charge whichever phones are not using the wireless charging pad, which is awesome to see. And it's the first of many USB-C ports. In fact, there are 6 USB ports in this vehicle. So we have 2 there. We actually have 1 up here in the mirror for a dash cam, which is pretty cool. They figured that a lot of people are using dash cams nowadays, so it's really good to have a shortcut USB port there too, although it doesn't have the 45-watt fast charging that all the other USB-C ports do. There's 2 more in the second row, and there's 2 more on the driver's side in the third row, which we'll get to in a little bit. Down here is your shifter for your 8-speed automatic transmission. A lot of people don't like this notchy shifter, but it's taken basically straight out of a Porsche 911, and it's pretty easy to use. You got this big button for park, engine start stop button here, and electromechanical parking brake. Although I do wish we had a handbrake, obviously. We have 2 pretty large cup holders that can hold a cup of coffee pretty well. We have a nice little place for you to put your key fob, but before we get to the armrest, we have this giant shelf underneath this floating center console. So you can put a bunch of different things here. What you're gonna put there, I'm not quite sure, but it's nice that they give you that space anyway, giving you this very nice floating center console that's very easy to access while you're driving this tall vehicle. Now, if we pop this open, we have a nice little latch. We have a pretty large center console for an SUV this size. It's got this nice little felt lining on the bottom, and I almost forgot, there's yet another USB-C port living right there. So you're gonna be really well connected in this Atlas. And down here we have a fully lockable glove box. It's not the largest thing in the world, but it's pretty wide, and you can put some stuff in there like your user's manual. Up here we have absolutely massive sun visors, which is really nice on a sunny day like today. They have LED convenience lights, plus they are fully extendable. And up here we have yet more abundance of capacitive buttons. The really annoying thing is that even the dome lights are controlled with capacitive lights. You just touch in the region where the LED light is. I could only imagine trying to use that while driving. That would be immensely difficult, but everything up here, and I believe even the SOS button, is capacitive. So you could either press those on accident, or you're gonna be trying to feel around for a button that isn't there. that is incredibly annoying in my personal opinion. But up here we have a nice auto-dimming compass mirror with HomeLink. But we're not done with the capacitive controls just yet. Looking down here, we have our headlight controls. We don't have a typical dial, no kind of buttons, anything like that. We have a little mode button which toggles between auto, regular lights, parking lights, or no lights at all, plus all weather lights. Down here are also your shortcuts for your max windshield defroster and your rear defroster too. It's a little weird that they kind of live separate of the climate controls, and in fact you can press them very easily on accident. When I was doing some of my B-roll footage for this really nice trim down here, I kept accidentally hitting the capacitive buttons with my knuckle, which was incredibly annoying. So again, the capacitive buttons are just a little bit too much, but other than that, this is a really nice place to be. It's actually pretty functional, and the Shetland beige leatherette interior looks absolutely incredible too. But what you're really buying this Atlas for is the back seat. You can see that with the seat in my default driving position, I don't have a ton of legroom. I have just enough, and I have a ton of headroom. But I'm actually snaking you guys a little bit because these seats are fully slidable. They are in their furthest forward position, and if I slide it back and cramp my third row passengers, I can gain a load more legroom. You can see I can really sit back here and relax. And you can see I have my very own sunshade here, which is beautiful. I have some harder plastics back here, but I still have that nice wood trim. We have the same armrest padding back here, the nice perforation, the one touch down and up windows, and we have massive bottle pockets, which once again can fit all of the props that I'm using throughout this video. But we have driver and passenger side seat pockets, which is nice. I'm glad they didn't cheap out on that. We have 2 USB-C ports, a household power outlet, our own zone of climate controls for both the second and third row. We have little vents here, which is awesome. They can open and close. Over here, we have our own armrest with 3 different cup holder sizes. It's a nice, decent amount of padding, allowing me to get really comfortable in here. But we're not done just yet. In fact, I actually had to pull the microphone from my shirt because I'm increasing the range of the cable. But if I pull this little lever to my side here, I can recline the seat even further as my feet slide on the all-weather floor mats, and I can almost straighten out in the back of the Atlas. Especially with the sunshade, I can truly relax in comfort and luxury back here, which is awesome if you're carrying 5 passengers or 4 passengers, if you get the $395 captain's chair option. There are a ton of amenities back here. It's such a comfortable back seat, but we're not done yet. We have these touch-sensitive dome lights up here. I don't like how they're touch-sensitive, but they're pretty easy to use, seeing as we're not going to be the driver back here. But this is not the only row of seats. If we pull this little lever right behind me here, you can actually fully tilt these seats forward to gain access to the third row. Now, once I'm back here, you can see I have quite a bit of space with the seats tilted in front of me, but once I put those back down, it'll close me in quite a bit. And with these seats slid all the way back, you can see my knees pretty much hit right up against the back, but I actually still have a decent amount of headroom. These headrests pretty much have to go up, otherwise they're gonna cave into your back. But once I'm sat back here, it's actually not terrible. I actually recommend sliding the second row 1 tier forward to give you just a little more legroom. And I really like how instead of having 3 tiny seats, they give you 2 pretty wide seats, and these are rivaling the second row seats as far as width goes, and they're pretty nice. Although you don't have any heating or ventilation optional back here, you do get 2 USB-C ports, a few cup holders, the same thing on that side, but that side has a really nice phone holder. The one thing it's missing though is its own USB-C ports. In other words, if you want to charge someone's phone on the passenger side, they have to pull the cable across, which is just a smidge annoying, especially considering that this side is the only one with a dedicated 12-volt socket. Another interesting thing is that we have these little seatbelt guards, which is especially nice if shorter people are riding back here, which is probably what they'll prefer to do. But again, me being 5'8.5", with this seat where it is right now, I would not mind sitting back here for a couple and a half hour road trip. and I even have my own air vents up here too. This is honestly a little bit better than some full-size SUVs. But we're not done just yet. Just behind me is the liftgate, which can either be accessed by the door panel, pushing a little button under here, or waving your foot underneath there. However, from my experience, that only works about 20% of the time, so I'm just gonna push the button there, but it is a power liftgate, which is awesome to see. There's a little button to close it right there. You can just grab it closed if you want there, but once we're inside, there isn't a ton of room. There are these nice little pockets on the side, but again, for a short wheelbase 3-row crossover, this is about what you're gonna expect. If you want a ton of room behind the third row, I recommend you get a minivan, but back here we have the cargo protection system, which is these awesome little walls here that protect your grocery bags, which is nice when you're moving around a lot. But if we lift this up, you can see we have a false floor, which has your jack, and underneath this nice little cover, we have a space saver spare wheel. And I really like how they gave you a little felt cover so you can put stuff under here without having to touch your space saver spare. But we can turn the Atlas into a van by folding these seats down pretty easily like so. And if I fold the second row seats with a little bit of movie magic, I can gain a ton of room. And in fact, these seats are almost completely flat, which is unheard of in a lot of modern crossover SUVs. The one thing I wish we had is a center pass-through like we do in the Tiguan, but if that really matters to you, just go for the bucket seat model because there's a ton of room back here. And I really like how the seats lock down as well, meaning that they're not gonna fold up accidentally by themselves. But overall, there is lots of room in the back of the 2024 Volkswagen Atlas SE with tech. But we need to figure out how it drives. The 2-liter 4-cylinder can be a little controversial, but I don't think it's gonna be as bad as you guys think it will. So let's go ahead and close this up and get to driving the 2024 Volkswagen Atlas. All right, it's time to talk driving impressions. So first off, we have a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder with 269 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque, mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. I actually quite like the way this thing drives, even though they got rid of the 3.6-liter VR6, which a lot of people preferred to this. This, I believe, was the volume seller, and it still drives pretty quickly. It's pretty fun. The steering is a little light, but you can firm it up a little bit with sport mode. The acceleration is actually not terrible. It's a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. It doesn't feel slow. It's not the quickest thing in the world, but it's pretty good to get you to a 75 miles per hour freeway speed limit, as I was testing earlier. There is a little bit of body roll. One thing I noticed that I should point out about this Atlas, since it's a family SUV, is that the suspension is actually pretty soft. In fact, I was going over a few potholes and it soaks those up really well, but when you're leaving a parking lot, going over a curb or something like that, the whole vehicle kind of sort of rattles around. So it has very soft suspension. In fact, if I do this, you can feel the car rock around quite a bit. So it's very bouncy, but very soft suspension. I think that that was the right call for the Atlas. Braking power is also really good too. It feels like you're stopping a sedan as opposed to a large SUV like this is. I think Volkswagen tuned the braking feel perfectly. And in fact, a really nice feature I like about this Atlas is when I put my foot on the brake, it shows me the park, reverse, neutral, and drive as it is on the shifter, which is really cool to see. So overall, I'm quite impressed with the driving experience of this Atlas, and I think it drives better. It's a little more fun to drive than something like a Toyota Grand Highlander or a Honda Pilot. It definitely has more steering feel than the latest Honda Pilot, although the old Honda Pilot had more steering feel, if that makes sense. So overall, if you can get past the capacitive buttons, then for $47,000 as this is, I highly recommend this very well-equipped Volkswagen Atlas SE with tech. So thank you guys so much for watching my review of the Atlas SE with tech. I hope you guys check out my other Volkswagen reviews, and I will see you guys on the next one. And like always, drive safe.